Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Stalwart Saints. I'm Alex, your host, and today is another episode brought to you by my New Testament class. Okay, so I had a good study this week, starting with Second Timothy 3 and going into Titus into Hebrews. But what I want to focus on today is some of the things that I picked up from Second Timothy specifically. So I'm going to pop my screen up here and show you guys what I'm looking at. Here we go. Okay, so these verses in Second Timothy, starting at chapter 3, going verses 1 through 7. I think that these are super interesting. It is a lot of warnings of Paul to his friend Timothy, and fellow missionary, about the problems that would persist in the latter days and as part of the latter day apostasy. We talk about the great apostasy in the Church of Jesus Christ a lot, but this isn't really pertaining to these. I'm sure that we have a lot of those symptoms here as well. But when Paul talks about the latter day apostasy, he's talking about our day in the future. He probably didn't know when it was going to be. Nobody really knew when Christ was going to come back, but he had these prophecies that he knew were going to come true shortly before Jesus Christ did return to the earth. Another interesting thing to note is that Second Timothy was probably the last epistle or the last writings of Paul in the New Testament. So these were some of his. Who knows if he had a lot of time left, but I like to think that he probably was writing some of the most important things that he didn't get to quite yet and wanted to save the best for last. We can actually see in the next chapter here, he says, where is it? Here in verse 7, he says, I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Those sound kind of like last words to me, and it's also just it's straight up cool. It's really cool, just to be able to say that. I think of like King Benjamin too, who's like, I've served all my days. I've served God and I've served you, and I'm ready to die. I know where I'm going. That is cool. That is what I want to die with, kind of faith that I want to have. So this section starts off in verse 1. It says he says this know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. Obviously the last days are our times, not Paul's time specifically. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy. So something that I find interesting here that I we've talked about this a bit in my I'm taking a one credit class this semester called marriage skills, because it sounded fun and I needed one more credit to bump up to my limit to get a scholarship. Um, and okay, the class is like kind of sad because it's really like how to not ruin your marriage, which I'm engaged. Like it's not super helpful for me, at least not right now, and I don't know if it will be. But it's really interesting. One of the concepts that we talked about, anyway, I digress, is the consumer mindset. This idea that you know in Western culture we have this consumer mindset that like we can go and get things that we want and there might always be something better and we're always looking for the newest fanciest model of something, which is great when it comes to iPhones, not so great when it comes to dating or marriage. He talked about in the consumer mindset, it's my teacher, as well as our course readings, which includes a lot of quotes from general authorities, especially President Hinckley, who's kind of just a savage. I'm realizing lately he's got a lot of crazy quotes. Like we read about anger recently, and he was like if there are any men among you, talking in the priesthood session to specifically the men who is angry to his wife, who strikes out with words or with his hands. He's like, I rebuke you in the name of the Lord and command you to repent. Like, I don't hit my wife or my kids. I don't have those yet. I won't do that when I get them. But I would repent if I heard that. It was President Hinckley's pretty cool. Um, Surprisingly, he's a prophet. It makes sense. Um, but anyway, the consumer mindset is kind of this idea of selfishness, that we're looking for something new, and rather than committing to bettering what we have already, which is skill for relationships, we're looking in the sort of consumerist way that we're going to buy something that's newer because the old one isn't working as well. We've seen a huge uptick in divorces in the last couple of decades, especially since things like no fault divorce laws, which pros and cons to that. But people are just looking for easy ways out and better, newer models of things. Um, it talks about pride. We definitely live, especially my generation, is very self-centered, very much the world revolves around me type of thinking. Blasphemers, oh my gosh, okay. It's not that big of a deal to me usually, but the amount of times, okay, I work in construction. I hear a lot of straight up blasphemy. Um, and I also went to high school where I hear a lot of blasphemy as well. Just people taking the name of Christ and the name of God very lightly, using their names as swear words and just making mock of the whole thing. I watched I watched the movie Wicked. It was really good. It was incredible. The actress who plays what's her face, the Wicked Witch of the West. I'm not that much of a Wicked nerd. Um, is playing Jesus in an upcoming movie that is clearly a mockery of Christianity and of Christ. We have different music artists doing things that are very similar. We see straight up blatant blasphemy for the sake of blasphemy a lot of the times now. This is obviously a prophecy that has come true and is coming more and more fulfilled as we go. And we have here disobedient to parents. Okay, this is kind of funny too. Um, Everyone's been a little bit disobedient to their parents. I think in my generation, especially, there's a huge uptick. And in the next generation, Generation Alpha, which is really probably going to be Generation Beta. My kids are going to be Generation Beta. I'm kind of sad about that. I was like, no, I don't want to have beta children, but I also don't want to wait 15 years to have kids. Um, Disobedience to parents, I see is coming up in another kind of unexpected way, which Satan's really good at doing. In gentle parenting. Um, it's a bad idea. You should be gentle with your kids, yes, but gentle parenting, the idea of, letting your kids make their own choices, saying that you will punish them in some ways that are, really gentle usually, and then not following through with it. This just makes kids disobedient to their parents. Their kids these days, man, I love saying that. Kids these days, um, are becoming more and more out of control for, the people who still are having kids. Um, because of a lot of tactics like gentle parenting, and because honestly, schools have kind of become an enemy of the people. We have the internet that has kind of become an enemy of parents, and especially schools becoming enemies of parents. The idea, if you look in mainstream media, especially parents in TV shows and in movies are usually stupid. They're usually really, really dumb, and the kids know better than the parents, which is a really good plot device sometimes, but is not accurate to reality at all. Truth is, your parents are smarter than you, and they get a heck of a lot smarter the second you move out of the house. They get really smart really fast. And then last off in this verse, I think I've spent enough time on it already. But it says unthankful and unholy. Again, with this selfishness, this kind of consumer mindset. Verse 3, without natural affection. I'm going to hit on that a little bit more. Natural affection. I listened to a talk yesterday in my sacrament meeting, about charity, about what is love, and the speaker, masterfully, I would say, approached the different types of love. They approached, platonic love and romantic love and charity, the pure love of Christ, and all these things, and kind of intertwine them all together to make a cohesive story of like what is love actually. Nowadays, we see natural affection being thrown out the window. We see people, especially again in my generation, forging away from more traditional relationships. We're seeing a huge increase in pornography consumption, in hookup culture that we see pervade a lot today. And even this one's disturbing. AI girlfriends. It's crazy. It's okay. It was funny. We had Elder Bednar, come up to BYU Idaho, and he hosted the worldwide young adult devotional. Young adults or young single adult. I'm not sure which one of the two. It's basically the same. But he talked about basically the dangers of artificial intelligence and the appropriate use of it and the inappropriate use of it, and warned of some of the things to come. And this was kind of a prophetic inspiration because he talked about like AI girlfriends and AI companions replacing our actual human interaction. Which was kind of crazy, a kind of crazy take. It was like, this is really scary because I know that like you're an apostle of Jesus Christ, and what you say is going to come true. Um, so that is terrifying. And we've seen, I have seen it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I hate Facebook. Facebook is the devil's tool, but I use it to post my podcast and to keep in touch with mission people. So I gotta have it. But Facebook has given me so many ads since this new technology has come out for different AI girlfriends and things with taglines like "You can make her do whatever you want to do," or "Your perfect companion, customize your ideal girl," and it's disturbing. I already have the perfect woman. Facebook ads, leave me the frick alone. Um, But yeah, this is something that's been disturbing. There was recently a news article that my fiance sent me about a boy who killed himself because he was having a quote sexual relationship with an AI online girlfriend who. And he basically said that he was going to kill himself because he thought that he was in the real world, needed to return to the virtual world, and the AI girlfriend encouraged it. Big victory for Satan. Big victory. It seemed like he was a good kid, really solid guy, until this got him a very new, very scary tool of the devil that throws natural affection out the window and replaces it with something else that is superficial and evil in nature. We also see here, moving on, that right after without natural affection, truce makers. I think that honesty has come a long way. We have just the fact that we have as many types of lawyers as we do nowadays. We have to sign a lot of legally binding contracts. And back in the day, your word meant everything. You know, back in 1800s farming America, you told someone you're going to get a job done, you got it done. People who didn't regularly get things done, had a bad reputation, would not get hired, would not get work. And honesty was just a huge thing that a man's word meant more to him than anything else that he had. We see in the Book of Mormon too. We see a lot of examples of oaths that Nephi grabbed Sam, the servant of King Laban, and he was going to go back and report them to the guards and probably get them all killed. And as soon as Sam gave them his word that he wouldn't call out for help, Nephi released him. He's like, "Okay, I now trust you with my life because you said that you would do a thing," and he did the thing that he said he was going to do. We see as well in Alma, the beginning chapters of Alma, that the Lamanites and Nephites go to war. There's this big battle, and the Nephites win. They overtake the Lamanites, surround them at this river, and they say, "Okay, you guys need to go back, and you need to." Promise, you need to make an oath with us that you are not going to return here to fight us again. And they're like, we know we can't keep that promise, so we're not going to do it, even though that puts our lives on the line right now. That their word, these are the bad guys of the story. These are the people who like just attacked these guys because they wanted to make them their slaves and were mad at them for some generational trauma. Where their word to their sworn enemies still was worth more to them than their lives. I think that that's really profound. And now we've come to today. What does somebody's word mean today? And it means different things to different people. But I would say that the norm, the average of what someone's word means to them has fallen a lot over time. We keep going. False accusers. I'm not going to go into that, but I think you can think of a lot of false accusations. Incontinent. Incontinent, we click on the footnote there. Without self control. I'm going to diagnose this as TikTok brain. I remember seeing a Babylon Bee article recently about the TikTok ban that happened for like 5 seconds and then got reversed. That it was like Gen Z are mad about TikTok ban for 4.9 seconds, which is the maximum amount of time they can focus on something thanks to TikTok. I think that that's very true. It's not just TikTok; it's a lot of social media. Actually, I would say it's all media. I was going to say it comes from other sources too. It's really just media. The short kind of attention span and lack of self control that we have is kind of ridiculous because it is something that is preyed upon by businesses, by advertisers, by media producers, especially in the social media department. That is scary and is definitely a prophecy that I feel like has come true very recently. Older people have way more patience than younger people today, myself included. As a younger person, not as an older person. But then it says, yeah, fierce despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady. I wrote this down. Heady means reckless, high-minded, conceited, somebody who is very egotistical, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. I'm not going to go into that as well. I think I've covered that well enough. But I think we can see examples of this all over the place. I think that you're not without evidence that these things are becoming bigger and bigger issues. Having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. The warning there, turn away from those who have a form of godliness but deny the power thereof. I think that we could interpret this a couple of ways as well. First off, we could talk about false religion. There are people who have forms of godliness. I have been to actually a lot of churches in my day. I would make that a habit on the mission. If we had a lesson that fell through on Wednesday night, and I know that this group was having a revival or a Bible study or something, be like, let's go to that. So I've been to a lot of different churches and kind of explored some of their techniques and their worship or their worship. And there are a lot of forms of godliness out there. Some of them approach the truth. Some of them are good. I felt the spirit at some of those places, and some of them were for publicity. Some of them were obviously, um, all of them had rich pastors, except for this one Baptist church in I think it was on the Maryland side, but it was right on the border, Maryland and West Virginia. That guy wasn't rich, but the rest of the pastors were pretty dang well off. Um, they make good money. They make really good money. It's a little bit of a shame that I can't like commit priestcraft in my church and become somebody who preaches for a bunch of money, because that sounds like those guys do really well. Of course, their churches are all going to be gone in a couple decades with fall of religiosity and Christianity. Um, but I digress. Um, and denying the power thereof is a really interesting addition to that phrase, having a form of godliness. That these churches, these faiths, and these practices are without the actual stamp of approval and the authority from God. You might get the spirit and glimpses of it in some of these things, but they don't have the actual ordinances and covenants that bind us to God, help us to become more like Him, and set us in motion to prepare for our eternal exaltation. And then the warning: from such turn away. Don't go to false churches. Go to places where you can legitimately feel the spirit, where people there care about you and the welfare of your soul and want the best for you. I would recommend the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Might be a little biased, but it is the true church. Anyway, another form of godliness that I think that we can talk about while denying the power thereof is the advances in science. We see a lot of scientists kind of on both sides. I think most of the time we hear about the ones who are like, there is no God because we can prove everything with science. Then we got the guys who are really good scientists because they recognize the Creator's hand and have a lot of respect for it, and God prospers them in their work. We have made incredible scientific discoveries over the last few decades and centuries that have led a lot of people to marvel at God's creations, and led a lot of people also to think that they know everything and fall away from Him, believing that science is their God, while we know that God works through scientific means, that God is the engine behind all of these things, all these processes that we see that are so amazing that make our world tick. Turn away from these things, it says. Okay, I'm not going to dig deep into this next verse. I'm just going to give you one little story that's kind of a wild story. It says, For of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women, laden with sins, led away with diverse lusts." Okay, here's the story. I was companions with an elder in my mission who was talking to his friend on one of our P days, and he was saying this friend was serving in Africa, and he was saying that they keep meeting these people who they talk to them, they make conversation, be like, "Oh, how many kids do you have?" And these women would be like, "Oh, I have 4 kids, 3 from my husband, and 1 is a gift from God." And you're like gift from like immaculate conception, like what are you talking, what do you mean a gift from God? They're like, "Oh, well, 3 from my husband and 1 from the pastor." And you're like, what? 1 from the pastor. So you're telling me that these pastors are just seducing women and saying that it's a gift from God and God has a stamp of approval on this? This is crazy predatory behavior. This is like an unbelievable type of thing. This isn't an incident isolated to women or to Africa, but we see a lot of people in religion too, who use their status to fulfill their dirty desires. I'm just going to leave it at that. Ever learning, verse 7, and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Again, with this scientific community, with these pastors of false religion and these people who attend these churches, it is possible to learn things that merit you nothing. There's a lot of useless information out there, a lot of repetition, a lot of things that just aren't true and aren't going to point you in the right direction. And this is a warning. This is I think a very profound warning. Stop sharing. From Paul about our days specifically. I have here another quote. So this is actually in a discourse that I'm giving in church pretty soon. Um, One of the guys who was speaking yesterday, actually, he referred to his talk as his discourse, because that's technically what it is, and I think it sounds way cooler. So I'm just going to refer to it as that. So I'm sure that you've heard the quote from our prophet, in the coming days it will not be possible to survive spiritually without the guiding, directing, comforting, and a constant influence of the Holy Ghost. But I also recently heard this from an exchange between Elder Holland and Elder Bednar, who said, I asked Elder Holland, if you could teach these students, the students at BYU, just one thing, what would it be? He answered, we are witnessing an ever greater movement towards polarity. The middle ground options will be removed from us as Latter day Saints. The middle of the road will be withdrawn. If you're treading in water in the current of a river, you will go somewhere. You simply will go wherever the current takes you. Going with the stream, following the tide, drifting in the current will not do. Choices have to be made. Not making a choice is a choice. Learn to choose now. Elder Holland's statement about increasing polarization has been proven prophetic by the social trends and events of the 22 years since he answered my question in 1998. Foretelling the widening divergence between the ways of the Lord and the ways of the world, Elder Holland warned that the days of comfortably having one foot in the restored church and one foot in the world were vanishing quickly. This servant of the Lord was encouraging young people to choose, prepare, and become devoted disciples of the Savior. So here we have it. The message. What are we supposed to take from all of this? I have another quote from Elder President Boyd K. Packer of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. He said, we live in those perilous times which the Apostle Paul prophesied would come in the last days. If we are to be safe individually as families and as secure as the church, it will be through obedience to the laws and ordinances of the gospel. So again, the message here is do not be afraid. If you are doing what is right, if you are keeping your covenants, if you are keeping the commandments, if you are doing your best to truly follow God and Jesus Christ and do so with a humble and a true heart, then you don't have to worry about these things in your own life. You won't have to worry about falling into the consumer mindset. You won't have to worry about becoming a traitor, someone without natural affection, a truce breaker, a false accuser, someone with a form of godliness, heady, high-minded, lover of pleasure more than self, proud, blasphemer, disobedient parents, unthankful, unholy, covetous boasters. There's a lot of things there to worry about. But as we follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, we will be safe from those things. And I leave you with those things. Thank you so much for joining Stalwart Saints. I hope you enjoyed this. If you liked it, if you've learned something from it, please share it with your friends. Smash that like button if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, you can do that, but I don't feel obligated to say that because that's how YouTube works. So thank you so much. I hope you have a good day. Don't become a covetous blasphemer, lover of self, lover of pleasure, but